Okay, I need to find a new intro for these videos because I can't be saying long time no see anytime I do one of these videos when I don't record super often anyways. Okay, so first things first, I downloaded a thing called Delta Tune. That means when I play music in the background, I don't have to actually put it in the description anymore because it will just show up like that, which is useful. And that's it. We're going to go straight into this video, and it's going to be a video discussing 5A anti-airing and when and how you should do it and why it's strong and why it's not as strong as some people make it out to be. I'm just going to quite quickly hit out the main points of this video so I don't ramble for like 10 years like I'm prone on doing. So first things first, why do people 5A anti-airing? Okay, so in this game called Melty Blood, when you jump, you can block. For example, you can block a lot of things. You can block all air normals, so like jump A's, jump B's, jump C's, yada yada. You can block most air specials, like DPs, and some DPs and the like are not air blockable. Like Kohaku 63A is not air blockable. And very few ground normals. Usually if a ground normal has a second record part, it's air blockable like that. Like the first part is not air blockable, like you can see here, but the second part is air blockable. Normally super duper active stuff that's a part of like a record normal like stuff, those are usually air blockable, right? But some things that are not air blockable are most ground normals, like 5A, 5B, 5C, 2A, 2B, and 2C, right? So the thing that's super strong about 5A, it is generally a high hitting button that's super fast. So the idea behind the 5A anti-air is that you do it into a basic combo that gets you knocked down, right? So it's pretty much a way to discourage the anti-air people who are jumping on you recklessly. Now, notice how I said anti-air people who are jumping on you recklessly and not anti-air just generally, because there are some limitations to the 5A anti-air that we do have to quickly get out of the way. First things first, there's not a single A button in this game that is disjointed. Or well, I should say there's not a single 5A in this game that's disjointed. All of them are negatively disjointed, meaning the red, the hitbox lies inside of the green, which is the hurt box. This means that your 5A is always capable of being counterpoked or hit early. For example, Kkohaku is relatively tall compared to most of the characters in Melty Blood. She is very prone to trying to, like, if you try to 5A anti-air versus people who have air options or people who press their buttons a little earlier than normal, you're going to get counterpoked by their air option. And generally, the worst thing you can do in this game is get counter hit on the ground. I mean, the only thing worse than getting counter hit doing a 5A anti-air is getting counter hit doing a 2A anti-air because you take more damage crouching. But I digress. You don't generally want to be counter hit on the ground by a person landing on you with the air button. That leads to generally most of the casts like best starters. So we're going to be talking more in depth about that. Like that's like the very basic idea of 5A anti-airing. And now we're going to go more in depth. Like first off, who has good 5A anti-airs? Characters who can fudge the rules a bit and press 5A to anti-air in spaces which you would not generally expect. First things first, we're going to talk about our good old friend C. Wara. Wara players complain about their 5A for a bunch of good reasons. It's relatively slow at 5 frames. It's fucking 5 frames? I thought it was 6 the way these niggas be complaining about it. Is that right? I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure it's actor frame 6. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to bother checking it right now. It's relatively slow. It does not hit crouchers, and it's relatively long. But because of its length, it's really, really good at 5A entering because Wara, as you noticed, low profiles and moves his collision downwards a lot during his dash. So he's one of the best characters in the game at dash under 5A. His 5A is really, really good at entering because we're going to be looking at a lot of other 5As, and despite the fact that he grows taller when doing his 5A, you're going to notice that his 5A is really long horizontally and it hits relatively high up. This is pretty much the definition of the two things that you're looking for in a 5A anti-air. You want to hit like you want your 5A anti-air to be wide and to hit relatively high. The fact that it hits about as high as his collision makes it really, really good at clipping the legs of people who are falling down. Because like, see, like characters on their way down generally start. You can see that they eventually extend their legs downwards. Yeah, like here. Like this is not just a Wara exclusive thing. A lot of characters extend their legs downwards eventually in their landing animation. So clipping this with your 5A after you dash underneath them is pretty strong. Another character that we can look at who has a strong 5A anti-air is C Arc. Hers is like pretty much the cooler version of Wara's. We're gonna keep the dummy on H-Kkohaku first for now. Hers is the cool version of Wara's because hers is not as big, but I'm pretty sure it's faster. The thing was saying that his 5A was frame 5, but I'm pretty sure it's frame 6. I might be thinking of his 2A, but it doesn't matter. I'll double check that later. Anyway, hers is frame 5, and it doesn't extend anywhere near as much green, and it hits crouchers as a bonus thanks to this red over here. But it does the same thing that we're talking about earlier, where it's relatively wide and it hits pretty high up. Like it hits the upper half of her body, you can notice. And if we go frame by frame, and you're gonna see that she first grows for like a frame and then she shrinks a little bit for the rest of the animation. This is relatively good for a 5 anti-air, but the thing about Arc that makes her 5A anti-air so disgusting is the fact that she has 5B. It hits relatively high up and hit confirms off of 5A, and it is a spike, and that's extremely strong in this game because that means you can do stuff like this. I can't do the combos anymore because I stopped playing a C Arc like years ago. But she can get a full combo off of there that does upwards of 4K to 5K. That leads into Oki, which is extremely strong to do off of just a random 5A anti-air. So that's why C Arc 5A anti-air is so strong. Another character with a good 5A anti-air is Nero, and that's because he's designed to have a lot of really strong anti-airs because he cannot dash. Yeah. So his 5A anti-air, similar to Arc and Siwara, you're gonna see it's hitting the same points as before, relatively long, like this, and hits really high up. I mean, generally generally Nero is going to rely on his 2A anti-air because he shrinks immediately and it's active. Like 7 frames active on an A button, it's crazy. But his 5A anti-air is not bad either, although he does suffer from the fact that he cannot dash to position this 5A anti-air as like you can't like dash under people and then hit 5A anti-air. If he could, this character would be broken. That's why he's designed without a dash. Now the last character is 5A that we'll be looking at, who's really, really good for anti-airing, is the best 5A anti-air in the game. It is C-Sats. Her 5A anti-air is by far and away the best in the game for a bunch of reasons. First things first, it's frame 4, as you can see on the startup meter. And second things second, she actually shrinks a lot when she presses 5A. Like you can see the input there. Frame 1, she's already a little bit shorter. Frame 2, she's way shorter. And her 5A hits the perfect angle. It's similar to C-Sats, not C-Sats, it's similar to C-Arcs, in which it hits crouchers really, really well thanks to this lower hitbox. But thanks to the higher hitbox, it's really, really good at anti-airing. It's also stupidly fast. And she has 63C to always be able to confirm off of it, if even on regular air unblockable hits. So those are the stupid strong 5As, but let's talk about some 5As that are not a part of this discussion whatsoever. The bad 5A anti-airs. First things first, F-Sats. F-Sats has the average 5A anti-air, not the average, the most below average 5A answer that we're going to be talking about, and it's the low 5A. 5As that hit low generally are like low kicks like this that are done standing. Standing lows are strong because generally you don't have to be, when you get counter hit out of them, you're standing instead of crouching, so you take less damage. However, they are really, really bad for anti-airing. They're like, as you can see, it doesn't hit all that high at all. Like sometimes she gets lucky anti-airs with this part of the move, but it's not very common and it's not exactly consistent. Like 5A anti-air is a thing that you sometimes really want to be able to have, and not having access to it can be really annoying. Another character that runs into that issue really often is Hkkohaku. She has pretty much the exact same issue, but worse. Her 5A is pretty much like worse at anti-airing compared to C-Sats, right? Hers makes her taller. As you can see, she's taller than she normally is. She becomes super wide, and her 5A does not hit anywhere near as high as even F-Sats 5A. Like this is a 5A you're pretty much never ever going to anti-air with. Now, sometimes people will pin with these 5As after a dash under. That's a pretty good use of them because they hit low, right? So you can force the opponent to block on landing. And if you counter hit them as they're landing because they pressed their landing button too early because you dashed under them, well, you're in luck and you get like a 5A counter hit. But that's not super common, and it's not exactly what you're pressing these 5As. Again, you're doing them as like a dash under pin generally, and you are going to be running into a couple of issues when you do that. But first, I'm going to go back to H-Kkohaku, the character I'm most comfortable with, to discuss about when you should be using 5A anti-airs in general. We talked about some of the good ones, some of the really bad ones. Now I'm going to be talking about, like, Kkohaku has an above average 5A anti-air. It's not the best, but it's not bad whatsoever. I'm going to be showing you some of the use cases for 5A anti-air, because somebody was asking about it in LGNA yesterday, and I thought it was actually a relatively interesting discussion to have. So I'm just going to go this video off the cuff and discuss about 5A anti-airs for a little bit. Now, sadly, I don't know why, but the training mod tool is being a little weird. So when I try to do dummy record stuff with save states, I'm going to save a state here. You can see it resets properly, but when I start to record a dummy, it doesn't reset properly, which is weird. It's normally supposed to do that. I'm just going to roll with it. It means it's going to be a little bit of like, I'm going to run into a little bit of memory issues. Not memory, a little bit of muscle memory issues when I try to record these things, but don't worry, I'll try to make it relatively fast. Okay, first things first, there are some characters with very poor air to grounds, like F and H-Kkohaku. Like, as you can see, if we slow down these buttons, they don't hit deep whatsoever. Like, they hit far, but they don't hit deep. And versus characters like this who don't have air buttons that hit all that deep, you can use 5A anti-air as a pretty strong, like, level 2 option. Not level 1 ideally, but level 2. Why level 2? Because every single character has an air dash, a double jump, and an air dash. And these are two super duper strong tools that are great at smoking 5A anti-air. So if I reset the dummy from here, and I do something like this, I don't press a button, and I try to 5A anti-air that, you're going to see something interesting. Okay, that's weird. That's not how it's supposed to work. Normally it's... okay. You can see I'm trying to 5A anti-air. Kkohaku is literally just IDing over my 5A anti-air. And that means that she's capable of interrupting the 5As with like her own JA or something. Like, that's not super consistent, but it's important to know that she still has her double jump in this situation. And in a situation in which she didn't commit as hard, like let's say she, we're gonna move back a little bit, and we're gonna do 5A, do something like that. If I try to 5A into something like this, I'm pretty much asking to get ID back to a JC'd. Or to like, or to get like hit with like the JB at the end. Like, I'm pretty much asking for this JB to hit me or JC to hit me. So like, that's the thing about 5A anti-airs. Like, first things first, you don't want to be using 5A anti-air as your line of defense versus characters with strong air options. But it is really good versus characters who have air normals that don't hit super deep. For example, in this situation in which Kkohaku ID JCs, and we're going to make her ID jumps to relatively deep, I can pretty much 5A anti-air her on reaction, as long as I do it properly. I mean, it's easier when she's in the corner, when we're both in the corner, but like, yeah. Like that. As soon as she gets close to me, I can hit the button, and it's relatively fast. And the thing is, unlike Shield, I don't get counter hit, and I don't lose like I don't lose guard bar quality if I mess it up. But like 5A, if I hit it early enough, I can block in time. And hell, I can even OS my 5A, like if I press it early. And if I OS it, it doesn't come out on hit. Right? So that's another thing about 5A anti-airs. You can whiff cancel the 5A into shield versus characters who either do the air option a little later, or versus characters who have air dashes like Kkohaku that can just air dash over your 5A. However, it's really like see how strong this situation is versus a character like Kohaku. Like she can't hit deep enough to like scare me with something like this. Like if I do this to try to discourage a 5A anti-air, while I can't press 5A into this, it doesn't hit me crouching, which means you can actually 2A anti-air. And again, since we're doing a 5A, if we hit it early enough, we can do something like that. Now, of course, 5A shield OS is not that strong there because, again, they have all their air options. But versus an opponent that's falling and doesn't have any air options, the 5A, 5D anti-air OS is super strong. But generally in this case, versus characters who don't have air buttons that hit as deep, crouching versus them until they land low enough that they're pressing their air button will actually hit you is really strong. Of course, you gotta be careful when doing it because, you know, there's always the risk that you get hit. But like, see there, like if I press the thing in the, if I reset the dummy in the air, I could, okay. Bro, I'm pretty, if they press super early in the air, yeah, that's pretty much the example I was trying to give. Versus characters with air options that don't hit deep. For example, I'm using H-Kkohaku in this situation because I'm well aware of how not deep it hits. But another character who who struggles to hit as deep with her air options is Roog. Generally, every Roog except C Roog has this issue, and C Roog still has the issue. It's just that her JB can like scuff you out sometimes. If you try to use this technique versus her because it hits deep enough. It doesn't hit super deep, but it hits deep enough that it's not as consistent. But versus F Roog and H Roog specifically, they are really weak to 5A anti-airs if you have like even a decent one. Like there are some characters like the ones that I showcased who have super duper good ones and can press them versus some of the more bullshit air to grounds that I'm going to show you next. But versus some characters like Roog and Asian H-Kkohaku, you don't have to worry as much when you press your 5A anti-air. Now here's another situation. Here's a situation in which you don't want to press 5A anti-air against. I'm sorry. The first half of this video is going to be relatively clean and concise. This part, because I'm working with the fact that dummy systems are working as it should, is going to be very, very difficult for me compared to normal. Now, there are some characters that 5A anti-air just fucking doesn't work like ever, and we're going to discuss that right now. Now, a really strong tool you can use in neutral is... Okay, I'm going to make... is dash under. That dummy recording should be fine. Right, set it to dummy. Dash under is when you run under opponent, and because their back is turned to you, a lot of characters don't have crossed-up normals, so you get to 5A answer them. You know, that's the ideal, right? However, some characters, like Sinania, have really active air-to-ground buttons that they can press super early that will still hit you crouching and will snipe the green of whatever you try to, like, dash under 5A with. It's really hard to set up in training mode because I can't get like a consistent setup due to the way the dummy system is working right now. I'm going to try once more to see if I can replicate it in this. And that's close, actually. 1, 2. It's super active. I think that will work. Okay. Maybe I need to do it slightly later. Oh, now I'm having trouble timing the dash under to get the example work. Okay, so it happens relatively often. I could just find the example within my replays file, but I don't want to do this. Where you dash under the opponent, but they press their button early, so they... Remember how 5As extend green? What happens if they press their button early is that your extended green gets clipped and you get counter hit cross up, even versus characters that don't have cross ups. Characters that are really, really good at forcing that situations like that with their air normals are characters like C Nanya, C Coma, C Kohaku. C Arc is unique because her JC does not hit super deep, but because it is active for 10 frames, she can hit it way earlier than she needs to and still have the same situation happen. Characters like that are really, really hard to like dash under 5A, and it's generally not recommended for you to do dash under 5A anti versus characters like this. Like versus Nanya, 5A anti-air is kind of like a crack. It's a thing that's not really going to happen because there's an air button, as you can see on the bottom screen. If we press view screen on the, it's active for 6 frames, so that means he has a lot of leniency on when he can press it and hit you. For characters that have super active air normals, you generally do not want to be pressing 5A anti-air into, especially if they hit deep like C9 of JC. Like C9 of JC is pretty much the biggest example of a button in this game that you do not 5A anti-air, because it's just not, you're just going to get smoked super often. You generally need to commit a lot harder to beat things like C9 or JC, like either by like preempting it with like an air to air, although as you can see right there, it's really good at air to airing because it's super active and super fast, but like it is what it is, you know. Another example of time where you, I'm sorry for the second half of this video being so shit. Okay, so another time where you wouldn't want to 5A anti-air is dependent on your character, actually. Like, there are characters with theoretically decent 5A anti-airs, like C-Mech. Okay, please let me double check. She has a good 5A anti-air, right? Yeah, okay. Hers is fine. I don't like the fact that she grows taller for these frames. Yeah, she's weirdly tall for the first 2 frames of her shit. But she moves forward and then she goes back to her. Okay, that's such a weird 5A anti-air. Whatever. Her 5A anti-air is like not bad. It's relatively high. It's decent. Her dash is okay. Like, it's not the best dash in the world, but you know, considering it's a dash, she can dash block, so you know, it could be worse. But the thing with mech is that, again, when you press 5A anti-air, you are risking getting hit by someone pressing their air button early. Versus characters, even versus characters in which 5A anti-air would be theoretically good, you have to understand that the risk you're taking is immense because, for example, I'm going to set this off, and I'm going to set battle settings to counter hit. Like, if I'm the H-Kkohaku here, I'm going to take control using the dummy here. If I'm the H-Kkohaku and I like, oh, I'm fucking stupid. Whatever. If I'm the C-Kkohaku, I'm going to use a character with a crosslet normal to showcase this, but it's fine. Like, let's say I do that thing from before, where I bait out the, you know, the 5A anti-air with an ID JA. And if I bait it, like, I'm not even a C-Kkohaku player, but I can do feint combos. Okay, so yes, please. Only took a few times for the muscle memory to kick in. Anyway, that's like 4.7k damage, and that was a bad combo, mind you. I don't play this character enough to know what the max character specifics are. But like versus characters with poor guts, like C-Mech here, who, as you can see over here, has negative guts for most of her life bar, pressing 5A anti-air becomes much worse because you just don't have the HP to gamble with. Again, like characters like Kohaku, who has high guts for most of her life bar. Also, I actually never knew that 25 to 50 health, you have worse guts. That's such a fucking random stat on her health bar. Anyway, versus characters like Kohaku, and even more noticeably on characters like Arc, Nero, and Sats, they can afford to gamble with 5A anti-air because their health values are just much more conducive to that sort of like high risk, high reward gambling, right? But versus on characters like Hisui or Mech Hisui, their lower guts means they can't do it as consistently because they risk a lot more. Especially considering that these characters don't have like bullshit defensive options like Nero, Sats, and Arc do. Like Mech has barrier, but it's not that strong that she can risk her health bar essentially trying to fish for a 5A anti-air. It's also worth noting that Mech does not get as much off of a 5A anti-air as Arc does, or Narrow or Sats do. Even if it's on counter hit, those characters get a lot more damage on a 5/8. Like, for example, going back to my main, I'm going to set it to jump, and like on a counter hit air combo, I can do pretty much fucking bullshit versus my opponent. I'm gonna set this to first hit, I'm gonna set the dummy to jump and not block. Like, this is versus a character with a relatively high defense modifier, mind you, and I got 4.2k, and I didn't even fucking finish the combo, and I would have gotten Oki. Even outside of the corner, my character just gets a lot of damage and Oki off of just a regular. Yep, full corner carry, mind you. So, like, on characters like Kohaku, Arc, and Sats, characters who get lots off of single hit air counter hit combos, they can afford to go for more 5/8 anti-airs because the risk is offset by the tremendous reward if you can land the execution for these combos. Some characters have really good 5/8 anti-airs, but they're not going to press it as much because they don't get that much versus, like, I just showed you a good example with C-Mech, in which her combos off of a single hit air counter hit, like, they can be relatively decent, but they don't get as strong a position as Kawaku does after a 5/8 anti-air. And I think I touched upon most of what I wanted to talk about for 5/8 anti-airs. So I'm just going to do a quick wrap up in order to hit the main points again. So a 5/8 anti-airs in this game are strong because they are air unblockable pretty much universally, and some characters, when they dash, they become much shorter, and you can hit the 5/8, hit the opponent in the air, or their 5/8 just naturally makes them shorter. So characters with high hitting 5/8s can do a thing called 5/8 air unblockable. No, that's a different thing. 5/8 air unblockable is something else. 5/8 air anti-air is what this is called. My bad. Excuse me. So 5/8 anti-air is a thing that generally is stronger when you are behind your opponent and they don't have a cross-up normal. Versus characters with cross-up normals like versus Len, versus like characters who can hit cross-up in the air with an air normal. It's 5/8 anti-air is slightly weaker because generally their cross-up hitbox can just hit you anyway. But, like, yeah. Okay, so 5/8 anti-air is strong versus characters without deep jump-ins, and versus people who use their air options like willy-nilly in the air and they don't save them, like people who immediately ID and then double jump. They are pretty much free pickings to get 5/8 air unblockable or just like early 5/8 5D. Another strong thing about 5/8 5D is that it doesn't come out unhit, so you can do something like 5/8 5D 5B. Oh man, I feel so like I hope the first part of this video is at least helpful because I feel like I keep stumbling over my words for the second half. Really should have wrote a script for this. Anyway, 5/8 anti-air is strong versus characters without deep jump-ins. It's strong versus people who you have dashed under. As soon as you dash on our opponent, it's a lot. You get a lot more out of dash it. You get a lot more, and it's a lot safer to 5/8 anti-air them once you dash over them, dash under them. And it's strong versus people who use all their air options because they can't like mix up their timing in order to deal with you at all. Now, it is not strong versus characters with super active air normals. Generally, an active air normal is active for 4 or more frames. Not 4 or more frames. 4 is average. 5 frames is like slightly more active than normal. 6 frame and above, you generally want to be wary of pressing 5/8 anti-airs into characters with normals that are that active because they are prone to just hitting you, because they'll be pressing it a lot earlier because it's so active. So versus characters with super active normals, you don't want to be more careful with 5/8 anti-air. Versus characters with super deep hitting normals, again, you want to be more careful with 5/8 anti-air because they can swing their button super early and still hit you standing. You know, same deal as like the characters who have long active frames, but you know, just a different reason because they hit super deep. Characters who have both are you generally never want a 5A anti-air like whatsoever because it's not smart to do so versus them, like C Nania and C Coma. But versus characters that have one, it generally 5A anti-air is a thing that you can spruce into your play to force people to like press their buttons a lot earlier, which makes it easier for you to like dash under if your character has a dash that shrinks their hurt box and collision box, or makes it easier for you to air them preemptively because they're not pressing their buttons as fast or as early as you expect them to, or it gives you space to like just jump out or jump over them. Like 5A anti-air is a thing you do want to present, but it's a thing you don't want to overuse because again, it's a high risk, high reward maneuver. If you get counter hit pressing a 5A, especially if you get counter hit pressing a 5A and you're behind them, you're going to get pwned. So I hope this video on 5A anti-airs is somewhat helpful. It would be more helpful if I fucking wrote a script and then performed the script, but I think this video is good enough as is because I didn't want to do something like that right now. It's relatively late in the night, so see y'all tomorrow. I'm going to actually make another multi-blood video tomorrow, ideally. Hopefully it's better than this. Hopefully. I mean, I could just fucking write a script and make it better than, you know what I mean? Well, that's it for today.